Good afternoon and welcome to our training session, How to Run for Office. My name is Janet Arias Martinez, and I'm the Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives for CHCI, where I've served since 2013. I'm also a proud alum of our Congressional Internship Program. On behalf of CHCI, I'd like to thank Emily's List for their generous support of this session. Before we begin, it's my distinct privilege to introduce our session host, Congressman Gil Cedillos, and our session presenter, Vanessa Cardenas, President of Cardenas Strategies. Congressman Cisneros represents California's 39th Congressional District, which encompasses portions of Orange, Los Angeles, and San Bernardino counties. He served as a Supply Corps officer in the United States Navy and was awarded the Navy Commendation Medal, the Navy Achievement Medal, the National Defense Medal, and the Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal. Congressman Cisneros currently serves on the House Armed Services Committee and the House Veterans Affairs Committee. This session is going to guide you through the basic nuts and bolts of planning a run for office, the questions to ask yourself and the things to start thinking about, and the steps you need to take to get there. To lead us through this important content, let's welcome our presenter, Vanessa Cardenas. Cardenas is a seasoned political strategist and policy expert on issues related to Latino political participation, immigration, demographic change, political communication, and women's political empowerment. In addition to running her own firm, she's also senior advisor at the League of United Latin American Citizens. Her current projects include leading the Strategic Victory Fund's engagement with civil rights groups around the Election Disinformation Project and strategizing on Latino engagement with Climate Power 2020 and Emily's List. Welcome, Vanessa. We hope you enjoyed the training, and don't forget to continue the conversation on social media using the hashtag CHCIHHM20. And now, Congressman Cisneros.
Hello, everyone. I'm Congressman Gil Cedillos. I represent California's 39th District, which includes parts of Los Angeles, Orange, and San Bernardino counties. I hope you've been enjoying the CHCI conference, and happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Thank you for inviting me to speak at this How to Run for Office session. This is my first term in Congress, and it's also the first time I ever ran for elected office. I never thought I would do it, but after 2016, I believed that there was a need for change in Washington, D.C. My story is an unlikely story, and I'm the first person in my family to go to college. I was in the Navy for 10 years and I did 2 forward deployments. With a stroke of good luck, I created a foundation with my wife to help underprivileged students have access and be able to afford higher education. I always tell people that if you decide to run for office, run for something that you believe in. For me, it was about protecting and expanding healthcare, fighting for our veterans, and making higher education affordable for everyone. The campaign trail was very new to me. It takes a lot of hard work, and no one runs alone, so you need to have your family's support. So I want to tell you and share this moment with you of what I believe you need to do to run for office. I believe that all of you who want to be active, get involved in campaigns. But before you run for office, I encourage you all to go out and live life a little bit. Have a career, start a family, do things, gain some experience. I always tell students who always come to me that, right when they graduate from college, they want to go and run for office. I always tell them, please go out and gain some experience. For me, I served in the military, so I'm a veteran. I worked at a manufacturing plant. I know what it's like to work the night shift. These are all lifetime experiences that I have had and that are important, I think, to constituents and to voters when they decide who they're going to vote for. So I encourage you all to go out and gain that experience. I hope you all have a great session, and maybe it might move you to run for office someday, but please stay safe and take care. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It's so good to be here, and I want to thank CHCI and Emily's List as well for giving us this opportunity to be doing this session. My name is Vanessa Cardenas, and I have worked in DC in different positions for a number of years. But one of the things that I have learned throughout my career is that we can have the best policy solutions in the world, but if we don't have champions that actually advocate for them, it's really hard to actually make things happen. So what we need is people that are experts in policy and are always pushing for those new solutions. But we also need people who are going to fight for those solutions in the halls of Congress, at the state and local level, and pretty much at every decision-making table. And as those of you who are watching this session know, there's a real need for Latino leadership. I don't have to tell you guys this, but we know that there's just a lack of representation of Latinos everywhere, but in particularly for Latinas, which is why I encourage all of us to consider running for office, whether it's for the local school board, the county board, or hopefully many of you for the federal level, or even, the presidency. So we are going to be spending the next hour learning the basics of running for office. But before we do that, I want to just take 1 minute to tell you about Emily's List. Emily's List is a political action committee committed to electing women, pro-choice Democratic women, up and down the ballot. And Emily's List has been around for over 30 years, and they have pretty much supported every Democratic woman member of Congress, and as well as over hundreds of women in state and local office. So the information that I'm about to share with you is pretty much targeted for women, but obviously, this session is open for everyone. So we welcome everyone to be part of this conversation. But I just wanted to highlight that this information was created with women in mind, by women who have been in the trenches working and electing women to run for office. So please invest your time in this next hour. Just put it what you put. You're gonna get out of this what you put in. So make sure that you are engaging with us. We're going to try to use the chat as much as possible to ask your questions, to provide your comments. We'll also, at the end, talk a little bit about resources that you can pursue after this session. So we really encourage you to take opportunity of this time. All right. So with that, I'm going to ask Mike to please go to the slides. Great. This is all virtual, it's all new, so we'll see how we go through this. All right, so this is the agenda for today. Welcome, and we already did that, and then some housekeeping announcements. But we're all at our home, so if you need to grab a drink of water, do that. If you need to go to the bathroom, do that. Just let's be comfortable and let's just engage with folks. We're gonna talk about taking the first steps in running for office, how to tell your story, questions to consider and research, and then we're also going to have enough time throughout for questions and answers. So I think I already did this piece. So let's go to the webinar norms, which is the slide that you see right now. So please, again, invest in our time together. All your questions are valid. Please use the chat for the questions, and then we'll take some time at the end to answer those questions. And then please, one thing that I want to really stress is to just please remember that slides are internal. You are taking the time to do this, and we really hope that other folks are going to do the same. So this information is provided for you. So we just want to be respectful of that. We can go to the next slide. Great. So I'm going to ask you a question, and please use the chat. What do you think are the must-haves in order to run for office? And you can just write your comments on the chat and say, what do you think are sort of the things that anyone should have in order to run for office? I'm going to call out some things here that we think are crucial to have, but want to make sure that you are engaged on this. One of course, the very first things that we think are really key is integrity, right? We want to make sure that we are electing people that can earn the public's trust. So I think as progressives, this is something that we believe that every person that's running for office, whether it's at the local level or at the state level or at the federal level, integrity is a must-have. We can advance to the next. Passion. This is so important, and this is something that Congressman Cisneros alluded to in his opening remarks a little bit ago, but you need to have passion about an issue, about your community, about something. Because in the long days of campaigning or when things can get rough, you need to be able to draw upon that passion to help you and push you to keep on going. So passion is really important. And a part of that, how you discover that passion is by working in different issues and working in different spaces and discovering that for yourself. We can go to the next. I think it was motivation, and let's go to the next. Let's just go ahead and go through the rest of the list, if we could. Thank you. So motivation, again, you're going to need a lot of it because campaigning is hard. Running for office is hard. Being elected is hard. Lots of meetings, lots of talking to people, engaging with folks. So you need to sort of have that motivation to just keep on going. Commitment. You need to have a commitment to yourself, to your community, that this is a journey that you're going to start and that you are going to see through. It's just a really important piece of being an effective campaigner and as well as an elected. The next one I really want to stress because being a candidate and being an elective means engaging with people. Now, does that mean that you have to be an extrovert? No, it doesn't mean that. In fact, we know of many introverts that are great candidates and electeds. An example that I can give you is Stacey Abrams. She is a self-proclaimed introvert, and yet she is an incredible she's just an incredible person, and she's just so inspirational. And in her races in Georgia, she really has been able to bring a coalition of groups to support her, and has articulated such a inspirational agenda for people to support. So you don't have to be an extrovert, but you do have to enjoy engaging with folks because people are going to want to meet you. They're going to want to ask questions of you. You're going to have to spend time with people, not just people that you're asking about their support, but also your own team. So you need to be able to sort of have that, that instinct to just be engaging with them and just get to know them and so on and so forth. The next one is willingness to learn. Willingness to learn is really important, because you're going to have to learn a lot. You're going to have to learn different issue areas, what's important to people. You are going to have to learn to debate folks that might not be on the same page with you. You are going to have to learn to ask for money and raise money for your race. You are going to have to learn to rely on a team. So running for office takes a lot of learning, and it's just really that willingness to adapt and be able to do that. That's really important. By the same token, willingness to ask for help. Again, one of the things that I think even Congressman Cisneros alluded to is that you're going to need a team and you're going to need help, whether that is for help for someone to help you make dinner one night when you have to be campaigning or at a meeting, or whether you are going to be asking volunteers to help you canvass a neighborhood, or whether you're going to ask, for help for phone banking. So you have to be able to be comfortable with that and asking for help. And then I guess I don't have to say this because I think most of us know that politics is a contact sport, unfortunately. And you're going to have a lot of people that are going to scrutinize you and also criticize you sometimes, because that's just part of the job. When one is in the public eye, you just need to understand that that's part of the trade-off. People are going to have opinions about the positions that you take. They're going to have opinions about the policies that you support, and you need to be able to defend them and engage with folks in a conversation about it. So it's especially for women too. As we know, women often are measured with a different stick, right? And they are, sometimes people make comments about their hair or how they, the clothes they wear, and so on and so forth. So those are things that are not, obviously, those things are not something that we look forward to, but it is a reality of the space that we occupy in the times that we live in. And especially now with this information and social media and videos and all of that, there's just added exposure out there, and we need to be able to adapt and deal with those things. All right, let's move to the next slide. However, in spite of all of that, the reality is that we need more people of color to run for office in general, but specifically more progressive women and women of color in particular. I have already mentioned the fact that Latinas are so underrepresented, and there's just so many ways in which we can engage and be present in our communities, helping make policy and political change. I don't know if you all know this, but there are over 500,000 positions of electoral positions across the country in the United States. So there's a lot of opportunities in terms of being able to run for a position and make change in our communities. And we just need more of your voices in all of those tables. We can advance to the next slide. So yeah, more progressive women needed. You. All right, so we are now going to talk about taking the first steps of running for office. Next slide. And we want to start with this one, which is a real simple question, but a question that you should be spending some time thinking about, because this is a question that you are going to be asked time and time and again, which is, why are you running? And it's a fundamental question that it's going to inform your speeches and your presentations and your elevator pitch, and we'll talk a little bit about that, and your personal story. But also it's going to inform sort of your overall messaging around, why you're taking this step. And for those of you that are already thinking about it, if you could also just put in the chat, why are you thinking about taking this step? Let's go to the next slide. And again, this is going back to the questions that only you can answer. Why do you want to run? And ideally, the answer to this question would be related to the passions that you have, to the commitments that you have, to the ideas that you want to bring to the table, to your desire to make a change, right? But I think it's really important to articulate that. And along those lines is, what do you offer to voters, right? What is the vision that you want to present? What are some of the experiences that you have had that you want to bring to the table? So that's also really important to articulate as you think about how you're going to communicate with voters. Do you have the discipline and the drive to win? This is, at the end of the day, it's a race, and you want to win. You have to bring in your ideas. You have to build in your team. And do you have what it takes to make it across the finish line? I think most folks do. They do have what it takes, but also part of that is taking the time to research and get ready. And again, be able to answer these really important questions in an honest and authentic way. And then the next question, which is really, really important, is, are you willing to raise the money that's necessary to win? When we do trainings in person, not too long ago, well, it feels like a while now, but one of the areas that people are most worried about when it comes to running for office is the fundraising piece. And we believe at Emily's List that anyone can learn to raise money, but you have to be willing to be able to do it. So the question is not if you can do it, the question is if you're willing to do it. And it takes time, it's uncomfortable. We meaning, Latinos or, women of color, we don't like to ask for help, but particularly financial help. But it is part of what needs to happen in order to run for office, and part of what it takes to motivate people to actually support you. And and hopefully through the passion and through the ideas that you bring to the table, people will feel motivated to invest in you. But it is part of the process, and we have many tools to help you get better at it, but you have to be willing to just step out there and make those phone calls and ask for money. And then the other question that we always ask you to think about is, what seat do you want to run for and why? And when we're doing this trainings in person, many people, when we ask them what seat do they want to run for, everybody wants to run for Congress, which is a great thing. But you always also have to think about how much it costs to run for a congressional seat. And some of those races are in the millions, right? And you have to understand, you have to ask yourself, where do you want to make the most difference, and why and how? And one of the things that we always say to folks is, it's really important to think about state and local races, because that's actually where you gain an experience, where you can, you don't have to raise as much money as you would for a congressional race. But it's also at the state and local level where you can make the biggest difference in the shortest amount of time, because you're dealing with bread and butter issues that your community cares about. So it's important for you to keep those things in mind and just have clarity about what races you want to throw your hat into. And of course, there's a lot more research that goes into this decision. But I think, from the beginning, you need to start articulating what is your sort of next step in that political journey that you have. And that might mean at some point running for a congressional seat, but it could also mean starting with your school board, with a school board seat or a city council seat, et cetera, et cetera. All right, next slide. The other questions that we encourage folks to ask about is not the right time to run, right? And nobody can answer that but yourselves. And this is a very personal question, because, I've said earlier, to run for office, you need a team, and not just a team of people that are going to support you in your campaign, but you also need a team of people that are going to support you in your personal life. So it's your family, whomever that is, whomever you consider that to be your family, ready to be the support system that you need. If you have kids, who's going to pick them up from school if you're unable to do it? If you have to make dinner, is there someone who can step in last minute to make that for you? If you have pets and somebody needs to walk them, do you have someone who can cover those things for you? So we raise these questions because it's really important for folks to really understand that they do need a support system beyond sort of your typical campaign team. You also need a support system for your personal life and the responsibilities that you have in your personal life. The other question that's, of course, super important is about your current job. What's going to happen with your current job? Are your personal finances in order? How are you going to support yourself in the time that it takes to run for office? Those are really important questions that only you can answer, but you need to think about before you decide to run. And if the answer is, maybe I'm not ready this year, maybe you are ready for the next one. But those are things that you really need to think about. And then what happens if you get elected, right? Life changes when you get elected. You might have to move, right? If you are running for a state level office, you might have to move to the Capitol. If, you might have to change your jobs depending on what kind of job that you have. So those are that's part of the research that you have to do, but also the considerations that you need to take into account. All right, let's move on to the next slide. And now we're going to talk about a very important aspect of running for office, which is being able to articulate the power of your personal story. When you are a candidate, there are 3 speeches that you need to master. The first one is your elevator pitch, which pretty much is about a minute or so, which, what the elevator pitch means is that if you're ever stuck in an elevator with a potential funder that can contribute a lot of money to your campaign, you should be able to tell that person in 1 minute why you want to run for office, why that person should support you. So that's something that you need to sort of put together and practice and be able to articulate when you are presented with that opportunity. You also should have sort of your stump speech, which pretty much articulates the vision that you have for the race that you're running, and again, why you're running for office and who you are. And that should be, I would say about the max 5 minutes, because nowadays everybody has just really short attention spans. But the third piece, and this is what we're going to talk about next, is your personal story. The personal story is just a really important way to communicate to folks why you're running, but most importantly, who you are and why you can make effective change for your community. And this is sort of, in a visual way, the formula that we've come up with. So it's pretty much talking about your story, but connecting it to your community or to the struggles that your community faces, which informs your purpose, which informs your passions, which is what's driving you to run for office. So these are sort of, again, some of the, so a visual representation of what we're looking for. I think the biggest thing on the personal story is also really important to realize that this has to be authentic, it has to be relatable, and it has to be compelling. And we'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. If we can go to the next slide. So here are some really important elements of a good personal story. Like I mentioned earlier, it needs to be relatable, it needs to be compelling, and it needs to be authentic. And a good personal story really answers the question about why you're running for office, what you bring to the table, and what are you going to do about it. So here are some of those elements. A good personal story describes a situation that you have faced in the past, and it could be in any of these issue areas, anything from immigration to education to financial challenges that you have had. It speaks to a reaction that you had, how that situation made you feel, which speaks to the resolve, to the action that you took, or to the decision that you made because of that. And I think these three elements are really important because you are being very specific about what happened to you and what made you decide to take the step to run for office. But in speaking about your situation, the idea is to create that connection with the audience, because most of us, even though we have unique experiences, we have we face common challenges, right? Even though my experience with, for example, I would say immigration is very unique to me because I have unique circumstances, but the immigration issue affects my community in we all sort of face the traps of the immigration system. That, I guess, what I'm trying to say. Another example is, I experienced the educational system with my kids in a unique way, but I know that that's something that every parent is also experiencing, again, in their unique way. So the idea here is to speak about your situation, but also connect it to the broader sort of to the broader issues and how others are experiencing a situation, but also talk about very authentically about how that made you feel and how that situation affected you. And again, talk about the resolve, because this is what separates, I guess, the doers, right, from everyone else that sort of takes the situation and the reaction. And this is when we talk about sort of the passion and the commitment that you had to actually do something about that situation and the reaction that you had. And in a personal story, like every other speech you have, you should always have an ask, whether that is an ask for volunteers, whether that's an ask for support, whether that's an ask for money for your campaign. So, and also, the one thing that we always say as communicators is that you should always connect it to democratic values, right? And what I mean by that is that when we are speaking about the situations and the reaction that we had and the resolve, we want to speak about, what's driving sort of our passion and our commitments. And for the most part, what's driving it is this aspiration to the American values such as hard work, opportunity, tolerance, freedom, right? So it's really important to speak about those values, because those values really unite us as Americans, and it doesn't matter who we really are. It's we all believe in those values, or I like to think that most of us believe in those values. So the idea again is to speak about your personal story from a very personal experience, but connected to the community and the broader sort of values that we all aspire to as Americans. So I know I've spoken a lot. We're going to get to questions in a second, but I want to show you an example of what we think is a great personal story. And this is an example from Delegate Elizabeth Guzman, who was elected in 2018. She was the first Latina to be elected. She was one of two Latinas that were elected in 2018 to the Virginia State Assembly, and she's an immigrant. And here's her story.
I came to this country as a single mother, looking for opportunities for my oldest daughter. I'm originally from Peru. I came just with a high school diploma, and I never imagined that educational and professional opportunities will become available to me. Like many other immigrants, I juggled 3 jobs just to be able to afford a 1-bedroom apartment. I've always worked full-time while I went to school and raised my family. And today I have 2 master's degrees, one in public administration, a second master's degree in social work. My experiences in this country have assured me that it's important to stand up and protect the American dream. That's why I'm running for office. When I moved here, I didn't have that much money to pay for rent. So when I see now, many years later, that the minimum living wage in Virginia is still $7.25, and we are living in one of the wealthiest states in the country, and seeing parents that are actually in my district are still having 2 jobs or 3 jobs to make ends meet, and they have to decide in between food and family, that takes me back many years ago. I want parents to make more money so they don't need to have 3 jobs, and they can spend more time with their children so their children can succeed as they grow up. When Hillary lost, and my son came after school telling me that we need to leave this country because the president doesn't like people who speak Spanish, I said I had to stay in this race, because not only my children, but children who look like them, that they could look up to me and say they belong here. Living in a safe place where everybody is welcome and respected, regardless of how you look or where do you come from, that is the American dream. The people in the 31st district, they deserve an advocate that will fight for them.
My name is Elizabeth Guzman, and I'm running to become your delegate in the 31st district.
Hi, everyone. I'm back. So I hope that was a good example. I would love to hear your comments in the chat, and we'll go to questions in a little bit, so we'll be able to reflect a little bit on the comments that you made. But again, we believe that Delegate Guzman did a great job in weaving in her personal story to the issues that she was fighting for. And we feel this is such a compelling way, especially for our women to run, because they all have such compelling stories. And I know that most of us, we all don't think that our stories are unique or compelling, but they are, that we all, again, struggle in different ways. We all face adversities in different ways. And it's really something to hear that articulated as a way to communicate the commitment that we have to make change. So I really encourage you to spend some time thinking about this, and just thinking about the formula and how you would put your story together. And so let's move on, because we still have a lot to cover. So here's another slide: personal story best practices. Again, share your experiences, tell the story that explains the why you're running. time your story. And this is something, again, that I mentioned earlier about sort of the times, right? 3 minutes. 3 minutes is what we think is a good amount of time for you to be able to tell your personal story. If you do it longer than that, people just lose focus. We are all guilty of that. The attention span of the average person is not what it used to be. So in general, keep your personal story, your speeches short and sweet and to the point, because that's what we need to do to just keep people's attention. Connect your story to the work and the race, meaning connect your story to the struggles that people are facing in your community. And I think for the most part, if you start off your story based on sort of those issue areas, you should be okay. And of course, this doesn't apply to our virtual life now, but whenever you're in front of people, always read the room, meaning see how your story is landing, how your speeches are being received by the audience. You have to practice a lot. None of this is, it's very few people that have a natural talent for public speaking. Most of us have to practice time and time and again. So please always first of all, be mindful of your audience, understand who your audience is before delivering any type of speech, but also read the room. And the more you get comfortable with your personal story, the easier it's going to be for you to observe how people are taking in your story. And again, I said this before, but practice as much as possible. Practice in front of a mirror, practice in front of your family, practice in front of a friend who can give you honest feedback. All right, I think we're going to questions next. So I'm going to bring in my wonderful colleague, Natalie Cohn. And hi, Natalie. Thank you so much for figuring out the questions. I know that we probably have a lot of questions from the time that we have spent reviewing this material.
Well, I have just a few for you, and I can make it quick. So you were just talking about personal story, and that everybody has a personal story. We had one question that came in about that. Someone says, I don't know that I've had one moment or experience that shaped my decision making. How can I narrow down my life to one story?
Mm-hmm. Well, you don't have to. And I think that's an excellent question. I think in general, we sort of give that formula to try to identify a nugget that really illustrates what you are, why you're running. But if the reason that you're running is because of a collection of experiences, then, that's what you should feel good to write about and share about. I think that in general, the formula of just speaking about your journey and your personal story and sort of whatever experiences you have had, and connect that to the challenges that your community is facing, and how that fuels your purpose is just the general outline of what we would encourage you to follow.
Awesome. Thank you for that response, Vanessa. Mm-hmm. Completely agree. One other question that came in was about fundraising. Someone says, how do you fundraise when you don't have a lot of money or come from a community without a lot of money?
Okay. That's such a great question. And I am going to quote my former colleague, Mathoni Wambu-Kral, who's now at the DNC, and she's the political director. I would say that money does not buy love. Okay. There are a lot of millionaires and people with a lot of money that have not won races. So money is not you don't have to be wealthy to run, but you do have to be able to raise money. And part of what we teach you, or some of the things that we go through when we do the fundraising training. And in fact, Natalie, we are doing a fundraising training soon, right? I think it's next week.
Next week, and Nancy, who's in the comments, I'm sure can share more information.
Good. But part of what we talk about is, obviously, you are going to have to ask the people who love you and who are close to you to invest in you. That might be $3, and that's perfectly fine. That might be $10. So what I want you to focus on is just being able to make the ask. And as long as people are investing in you, even if it's in small sums, that shows momentum and that shows support. And people will be surprised to see how sort of that builds that builds a narrative around you that people want to support you, that people want to invest in you, even if the amounts are small. And little by little, you start sort of building a war chest, and that way other organizations then can come through and invest in you. So don't feel like, just because you don't have any money, or you don't come from a community of money, that you're not going to be able to raise the money. The money is there. We just have to find it. And part of the work that the advisors at Emily's List do is they actually identify people that you can go to, and funders, or people that might be wealthy and are looking to fund women that really have a progressive vision. But that also means that has to go hand in hand with the work that you are going to do, going to ask the people that know you to invest in you. And that also brings me to another piece. That's why the networking early on, and making connections, and having meaningful relationships with people is really important from as early as possible, because that way you grow the number of people that you can approach.
Excellent. Thank you, Vanessa. And I have one final question for you. And that question is, what advice do you have for young people who have been on social media for almost all their lives? And how can that impact their chances of running for office?
That's an excellent question. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I will say very quickly, go back to your social media and scrub it. And yes, nowadays it's just so easy to post things and post videos and make comments. So part of doing research, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second, is doing research on what you have posted in the past, of what people have posted about you, and to the extent that you can, if you can, take it down. If you can't, then you know that that's something that you're going to have to prepare for. But we'll talk a little bit about that in the next section. And Natalie, if I missed anything, please feel free to add.
No, perfectly said. Thank you, Vanessa. We have a few more questions that have come through, but we can address them in the next section.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. All right, so I'm glad that people are thinking about their social media, because we'll talk a little bit about that. But let's go into our next section, which is the research piece, which is really important. So you guys have decided to run. You said you're going to take the plunge. You know why you want to run. You have a passion. You're thinking about putting together your personal story. So now what? So the next piece is research. We can go to the next slide. And the first piece of advice that we give is just, no, we can go to the next slide. You had the right one. Great, thank you. So finding the right race. What types of seats are available? And we'll talk a little bit about some resources where you can look this information up. But you should think about, okay, what are the positions that I'm interested in? What are the opportunities that are coming up? When are they going to be available? What seats are going to be open? Or if I have an eye on a specific seat, when is that seat going to be open? It's important that you also research the history of the district that you want to run into. Like, are there large numbers of small businesses, or is there a huge chunk of the population are parents with young kids? I don't know. Has the district have like two big companies that are the major employers there? Just try to learn as much as you can about the district and the seat that you are interested in pursuing. Think about or research about any important changes. Have there been a lot of demographic changes in that district? Have there been a lot of, for example, foreclosures in that district? So try to become an expert in your district. And then the other question is, how does your profile fit the race and the place? Is that district, and I think the answer to this question is a resounding yes, is that district hungry for change in new leadership, right? Is that district looking to diversify its board or their elected bodies? So think about how the needs of the district are calling for your experiences and sort of what you bring to the table. And then think about other elections that might impact yours. For example, we know that when there's a presidential election, the whole ticket, meaning the other races, get attention too, right? Because people are turning out for for presidentials, and when they go out and vote, they're going to vote for different races. So think about what that means for your race, whether it's in a presidential year or not. But think about who else is running and how that might affect you in a positive or negative way. So those are just some things to think about. All right, we can go to the next slide. What are the applicable election laws? Really important. Learn your deadlines. And again, we're going to see in a minute where we can find this information. How do you get on the ballot? Is there like a requirement for number of signatures? Again, going back to deadlines, what are the deadlines so you don't miss it? Is there a primary? And then another question is, how many people have voted in previous elections? And all of this information is actually super accessible. You can Google it. You can go to your to the website of the Board of Elections and find all of this information online. But again, the point of this exercise is, again, becoming an expert on your district and on your race. We can go to the next slide. The costs. Everybody wants to know how much is this going to cost and how much do I need to raise? So it's really hard because every state is different, and the costs vary from state to state, as well as the size of the campaign. So you just, again, I think as you become more familiar with your district in your state and the races in the past, you're going to be able to find sort of at least a ballpark of how much it costs to run your race. The other thing I should say is that you are going to become involved, or if you have not, you should already, if you guys are interested in running, but you should become involved with your sort of Democratic club, Democratic committee. They can also share information. Other candidates, you should find a mentor, and that's something that we have not discussed. But for example, I live in Virginia. I'm very active in Virginia. My high school counselor's son actually was the first Latino that got elected to the state legislature. He's a friend, and right there's a relationship right there where, if I wanted to, I could ask Delegate Lopez about his experience. So do not be afraid to reach out to other people that have run at the state and local level. I am sure many of you, because you are activists, you're organizers, you are leaders in your community, people that are in different elected positions. So for example, I also know a few of my school board members because, again, I was very active in the school system and I know them. So use those connections, reach out to them, ask them, take them out for coffee, virtual coffee, and say, how did you structure your race? How much did it cost? And so on and so forth. And you'll get those answers. I think we're going to run out of time. So let's move to the next slide. All right, let's just put all the advance to the next and the next and the next. So here's some places to learn this stuff. Google, Department of Elections, the websites, Campaign Finance Reports, Ballotpedia. These are all stuff that's out there that you can research and spend some time to, again, become an expert, but also complement this research with people that that are in your network that you can approach, and don't be shy about these conversations. You don't have to tell them I'm running tomorrow. You can say I'm thinking about it. I would love to just learn about your experience and see how you came up with your path to win and how many votes and all of that and how much you spent and sort of those questions. All right, let's move on to the next slide, please. So you're going to do the macro research, meaning sort of like your district and the race, but you also have to go to the micro research, and that means research about you. Okay, and this is what we call opposition research, but doing opposition research on yourself. So think about it. When there's a race, the other side is always trying to find dirt on the candidate, right? And the whole purpose of doing this for yourself is so that you can anticipate whatever dirt there might be on you. So here are some examples of people that did not do their research, or even if they did, they didn't care, and then it blew up on their faces. For example, a Republican lawmaker who was one of the founders of a website that it was anti-woman, right? And he was discovered that there was that connection. Then we have another article here from a GOP attorney general whose law license was suspended, which obviously, it's not great if you're the attorney general. And who can forget the hearings for Dr. Price when he was nominated to be Secretary of Health and Human Services, and it was discovered that he bought some stocks. So the whole point of this is go through your background, and we can go to the next slide. Actually, this will complement this information. Think about your educational, professional experiences, your civic engagement, membership in organizations for you and your family, your immediate family, bills, investments, whether you pay taxes, and going back to the question that we had earlier, your social media commentary, essays, photos, things that you might have posted, things that you might have liked. So it's important that you do your research, not because we expect you to be perfect and not have made any mistakes, but most importantly, because we need you to anticipate any issues or attacks and be able to be ready with that response. Next slide. All right, so here are some specific suggestions of what you can do. Scrub your social media. If there's things that you can take them down, delete them. Do a thorough internet research of your name, and all of you guys know how to use Google, so see what comes up. I am someone that has, like I said earlier, I have been in DC for a long time. I've written a ton of things, and my name is out there. So on a regular basis, I go through that to make sure, not so much to delete it, because at some point, you cannot really delete much, but to also anticipate and see what's out there. One thing that I'm going to suggest is that if you're serious about running for office, buy your domain name right away, because it's cheap. It's about $15 a year. And this can help you avoid so many mistakes, because there have been so many candidates that did not buy their domain names. And then the other side realized that. So what they do is they buy someone's domain name and they put all their opposition research on that page. So then when the candidate wants to buy their domain name, they see that it's already taken. And not only that, it has all this negative information about them. So don't avoid that. So set up Google alerts, update your LinkedIn. Again, simple things that you could do. And then think about your brand and start posting things on brand. Think about the image that you want to project. Think about the issues that you care about, that you want to be known for. Think about the positions that you want to take, and just start, cultivating that brand online and offline. Next slide. All right. So knowing why you're running is really important for your success. Do not cut corners during the research process, or it will hurt you later. And get excited. We need you to really make change. Let's go to the next slide, which I think is questions. So we'll bring Natalie in, and it looks like we have 5 minutes left. So we have to make this quick.
Yes, well, I'll jump right in then. We had some questions about young people and engaging young people in the process. The first question, what would your advice for high school seniors getting ready to go to college and are passionate to run for something in the future? What would your advice be to them?
I think that's such a great question, and something that I wish someone would have told me when I was in high school is the importance of networking and building those relationships and just keeping in touch with people, because you never know when you're going to need them. And if you think about anything that has to do with running for office, whether it's about fundraising, whether it's about volunteers, or whether it's for to build a crowd for an event, if I had been keeping in touch with people and building my network and saving my business cards and creating a Excel spreadsheet with their information, it would be so easy, right? But people also do not want to be used, right? So what you need is to really intentionally build relationships, stay in touch with your teachers, with your friends, with your church group, with your volunteer groups. So be really intentional about building your community and bring them along the journey with you. Share good news, share information. I think that's such a powerful way of just really getting ready yourself for when you're going to need their help. That would be one
Awesome.
thing.
I
And
think
another piece I would say is, get familiar with the issues, right? And improve, you focus on your writing skills, focus on your public speaking skills, but also pick 2 or 3 issues that you really care about and really follow those through. And the last advice, Nelly, is also be really involved in your community, whether it's not just with an organization that you really care for, but also think about allyship, right? And be engaged in other organizations that you think that are really important to build alliances and coalitions.
absolutely that's great advice. And I feel like too, if you're a college student leaving high school, like run, for your school elections. That's always important too,
That's
and you
right.
can't beat volunteering.
That's right.
Vanessa, another question that I have for you. Thinking back to the beginning of this training, Congressman Cisneros mentioned that young people should wait and get experience first. What do you think about this, and what kind of experience is necessary?
I think life experiences are really important. I would say again, like Natalie said, run for office in high school. That's absolutely wonderful and fine. Build your work. I think it's good to build some experience, but I also think that we need really young people to run for office. So do not feel afraid to step out. I think as long as you have a demonstrated commitment to your community and you have been active, you don't need to have 20 years of experience or 500 jobs or anything like that. I think what people want to see is authentic leadership and commitment to make changes. And I know we only have about 2 minutes, Natalie, so
Yeah.
I
A
think we
final
still
question
have.
for you.
Yeah.
Yes, the final question. If I'm not planning on running for a few years, what can I do now to prepare?
Again, building your network, and I think creating allyship in your community is really important. And I would say try to take as many trainings as you possibly can. Like Emily's List training, obviously, is a great one. You should go to the longer ones because right now we're going through a lot of information really quickly. But groups like Latino Victory, there's a lot of Emerge. There are a lot of groups that are providing leadership training, so you should make the time to invest in yourself in that way.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Vanessa.
Great. All right. I think we have just one more slide, which is resources. So please visit the training center at emilyslist.org. And we have regular trainings. We also have a Facebook page, and I feel like Nancy has already shared some of those resources with you. But it's been lovely to be with you today. I wish we could see each other. I cannot see you, but I know you guys can see me. I hope that what we presented has been helpful to you. Please go to emilyslist.org to learn more about the organization. Please take advantage of the resources that we share. And Natalie mentioned earlier that we are going to have a training on fundraising. Please take advantage of that. But most importantly, as I mentioned also in the answer, the Q&A, really be intentional about building your own community and ignite change. Thank you for having me.